Hey, and welcome back to the channel. This is episode 3 in our Incident Command Simplified series here on Hazmat Ops Training. In the last episode, we talked about how to organize tactical resources in the initial response and assessment phase of the incident. Today, we want to talk about how we take the incident to the next level, how we start incorporating some of those incident management team practices and look at some really good sustainment practices for our incident. Stay with us. So once we've moved out of that initial response and assessment phase, it's time to start looking at building some really good habits for an incident management team style of management for an incident. And what I mean by that is let's start instituting some of those positions that are going to sustain us long term through the incident. We believe that one of the best ways to take organized chaos, and every large incident is organized chaos. That's not a slam on anybody. Even the best incident commanders, the best incident managers have organized chaos that they have to deal with early in an incident. So we feel like the best way to manage that is to start putting some of our planning elements in as early as we possibly can. And again, this has taken us into that incident management team type of a mindset, type of a mentality. We want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for long-term sustainment for these incidents. We can't just come strong out of the gate and then fade off a few hours into the incident. Most of these incidents are going to take multiple operational periods to be able to manage. So looking here on the planning P, following the initial response and assessment, we covered that in the previous episode. We need to make a deliberate effort to ensure situational awareness and resource accountability. So how do we do that? You may notice that we skipped over the agency administrator briefing. What we want to look at here is let's keep it simple and let's look at the majority of the incidents that we're going to respond to. We most likely won't have an agency administrator briefing. If that's applicable, if there's elected officials to talk to, if there are other people who may be the agency administrator in a given situation, then we need to do this step. But we're going to skip over that for right now. The incident briefing step of the planning P can be a meeting or it can be a process by which the incident commander assigns staff to complete the ICS 201 form. So we don't necessarily want to get hung up on the fact that we may have to have an actual meeting here. That'll come. There's a natural progression here, and when we need to brief on the 201, we will. But let's look at the elements of the 201 first and see how it can work best for us. So for both of these jobs that we're talking about putting in here, resource unit and situation unit, the ICS 201 form is an excellent tool for those two positions to be able to start documenting and really putting pen to paper, taking their assignment and actually putting it into play. And having a document that we can bring all of that information back to the incident commander, back to the other partners in the command and general staff to be able to communicate what is the status of those resources. What is the situational awareness piece that we're looking for at the time? 201 is a great tool. Both of these positions live in the planning section. And you may think, well, don't I need a planning section chief first? Not necessarily. The incident commander will oversee these two positions. These two positions will answer directly to the incident commander until there's a planning section chief put into place. That's okay, as long as we're doing the function, as long as we're gathering this information for the incident commander. That's something that the incident commander can supervise and not overload the span of control. Because think about it, these two people, or maybe two teams of people, they're not actually tactical resources. They're not actually something that the incident commander needs to oversee. These people are working for the incident commander on behalf of the incident commander to gather information. So it's not positions that necessarily will need to be counted in the span of control. Truthfully, yes, and in a purist standpoint, yes, but these folks can give a lot of added information and a lot of added benefit without really taxing the span of control of the incident commander. The good news is one of these positions likely will become the planning section chief. As more people are needed for the situation unit, more folks needed to be out in the field, gathering information, looking at things, traveling to the other side of the incident, whatever the case may be. It may take a team of people. The same thing with the resource unit. There may be a number of people who are needed to gather this information. Eventually, they're going to need supervision within those units, and that's where we would put in a planning section chief. So someone in one of those units is likely to become the planning section chief. And that's a good thing because those people already have some knowledge of the incident. They're not coming into the incident cold. So it makes sense that the planning section chief would actually come up from those units. So you see here in block number 1, the incident name, block number 2, the incident number, and block number 3, the date and time initiated. We need to make sure that we capture this information. The incident may not have a name for block number 1. That's okay. But in large incidents, generally things that are going to be reimbursable, things that are going to be covered under states of emergency, things that may have either a local, state, or federal declaration. A lot of times we'll need an incident name. But early in the event, if we don't have that incident name, block number 1 is not a terribly big deal super early in the incident. Block number 2, however, incident number, whether that's a local number, whatever the case may be, we have a place for that to be able to tie back to all of our other records by that incident number. And then the date and time initiated. When did we start this? If we're doing multiple 201s, in other words, maybe we're doing this one first. This is early in the incident. This may be 30, 45 minutes into an incident when we do this very first one, but we may do another 201. We may fill another one out in 5 or 6 hours because we have a transfer of command and we need to take that snapshot again of the incident. So this is where if we're doing it multiple times, we have multiple copies, if you will, but they're done at different times. This is a way to document that and capture that information as well. You see here that I've got repeated after block 1, 2, and 3. So on the next pages, this is actually a 4-page document. So we need to make sure that we transfer block 1, 2, and 3 to the next set of pages on the 201 so that we have that consistency and we can make sure that we're keeping everything correlated like we should. So block number 4 is for our map or our sketch. So this is a place, again, for that situation unit leader to be able to draw out. And if you have the skills for drawing like I do, it may not be a great sketch, but this is a place for us to sketch out again, that 10,000 foot view of the incident to be able to communicate what's where, what are the boundaries, what are the things that are outside the boundaries, what are things that may be exposures, what are things that may be things that we want to think about, daycare centers, nursing homes, schools, other infrastructure that may be around us, just anything having to do with the incident, not just the incident itself, but looking beyond the incident boundaries. Within the incident, again, what are those pertinent things? Have we split up into groups and divisions? If we have geographic divisions, what does that look like? So we've got a place here where we can either attach a map. Maybe we're doing an external map. Maybe we're doing a paper map somewhere else. We can do that. Or we literally can sketch it right here on the 201. So block number 5 is our situation summary and our health and safety briefing. Here we capture that high-level view of the incident by description. All right, so this is a way for us to put a narrative along with that sketch, along with that map. We're putting a narrative to better communicate the dynamics of the incident. What does this look like in words? And again, we can begin to associate those other hazards and potentially some mitigation strategies to go along with those hazards. And again, this form is going to bleed over into a lot of other things that we do. Remember, the 201 is the first step in a number of other things that will happen in our incident, maybe in other operational periods, maybe even in other days and other weeks of this incident if it's long and drawn out. So this is our first steps. These are the building blocks. And again, this is one of them. This particular block here, our situation summary, health and safety briefing, will bleed over into our permanent safety briefing that will go into our IAP every single operational period. This is also a good reminder for the incident commander if they've not put a safety officer in place. If they haven't at this stage of the incident, wherever we are, maybe we're an hour, 2 hours, whatever into the incident, this is a good reminder for the incident commander. Do I need a safety officer? Do the safety issues that exist here warrant putting in a safety officer as a part of that command staff? So you'll see here that this is the top of the second page of the 201. So blocks 1, 2, and 3, remember those are repeated for each one of the pages of the 201. So block number 7 here is a place for us to record our current and planned objectives. A good reminder again here to be looking forward in the incident and not being so much of a reactive thinker. And again, this is an opportunity for that situation unit and the resource unit to be able to advise the incident commander or other people in the command and general staff as they're gathering this information, to be able to advise them on what some potential objectives may be. Now, the current objectives, again, early in an incident, may simply be our policies, our GOGs, SOPs, whatever you may call them. So that may be what we're working on right now. But again, a really good reminder for us to begin looking forward, to begin leaning forward for objectives. And again, this is going to bleed over into our first IAP or potentially our continuous IAPs, because we do have objectives there that we want to communicate to our entire incident. So now we'll look at block number 8, which is our current and planned action strategies and tactics. And really, if you look closely here, this is nothing more than a log sheet. So this is a simple way for us to capture and to timestamp the things that we're doing. Now, if you've messed around with Incident Command at all, you'll already know that an ICS 214 form is really what we're talking about here. So this is a way, again, for either the situation unit, resource unit, or the incident commander that may be filling this out, maybe looking at the 201 for reference, whatever the case, whatever our use here may be. This is simply a log sheet, and it's a good way to get us in that early habit. Remember, we're trying to build good habits here. We're trying to build our way toward an incident management team type of a strategy and a way of thinking. So an ICS 214 form needs to be in everybody's hand. Everyone needs to be recording what they're doing and when they've done it. Then block number 9 is our current organizational structure as it looks at the time that this 201 is being filled out. Remember, we're looking at a snapshot of the incident, and this is a good time for the resource unit leader to analyze that incident structure, that command structure, the organizational structure, if you will. So this is a way for that person to provide input to the incident commander or again, to other pieces and parts of the command and general staff that, hey boss, this might not be working very well. Let me recommend some changes over here to be able to kind of streamline and make your organizational structure a little bit more efficient, especially when it comes to span of control. This is probably one of the best and easiest ways for a resource unit leader to be able to help an incident commander to identify those span of control issues and correct them very, very quickly. Block number 10 is our resource summary. Again, the resource unit leader has a way and a formalized way here to capture the resources that are currently assigned. Before we do this 201, where might the resources be recorded? Maybe on a small whiteboard in the command vehicle, maybe on a piece of notebook paper. They may not be recorded at all. We may be relying on the incident commander's remembrance of what's been dispatched and so forth. That's not the way we want to do business. So this is a good way to formalize and document the resources that are on scene, on order, that kind of thing, and what the current status of those resources may be. So let's look at exactly what we're talking about with placing people in these positions. Think about it as an incident commander. What is one of the things that I need, desperately need, that I don't have in the early stages of an incident, and I realize that it's getting big? I'm getting information from tactical resources, but sometimes those may be very compartmentalized pieces of information. What I don't have is the 10,000 foot view. I need that 10,000 foot view. This is what we're talking about with taking folks, putting them in that role of the situation unit leader and also the resource unit leader. But we're going to talk real quickly here about the situation unit and exactly what information we want them to be gathering. We're talking about situational awareness, and as an incident commander needing situational awareness, needing information, I need to be able to communicate to those folks that are going out and getting that information for me what those critical pieces of information that I need. What are the parameters? What are the things that I'm looking for? Otherwise, they may develop their own set of criteria, their own set of requirements for that critical information, and it may not come back and be what you need. So we need to be very deliberate about the assignment that we give to our situation unit to make sure that along with everything else that they see, we want them to document everything. We want that entire 10,000 foot view, but the things that we're really concerned about, we need to communicate with them and not just assume that they're going to get it for us. The next thing is validation and analyzation of that information. So we need to make sure that that information is true. We need to make sure that that information is accurate. So we need to communicate that as well to that situation unit to make sure they understand we've got to have solid information. We can't make decisions on sketchy information. Also, as they're out in the field, we need them to be able to make decisions quickly. We need to empower them that if they see something that's truly out of bounds, truly unsafe, an atypical situation, an unsafe situation, they need to be able to make immediate corrections to that, at least advise the incident commander or potentially the operations section chief that it's happening, but also to bring back, if it's not an immediate need, we need to bring that back, communicate that through the organization, and provide some corrective action recommendations. And then once we've done all these things, again, as the incident commander, I need to communicate to these people how I want them to handle, record, and store this information in the proper way. So once I've given the assignment to that situation unit, how does their work then become beneficial to me as the operations section chief, the incident commander, whatever the case may be? It's important to remember information supports decision making, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. Bad information is going to be a part of bad decisions. Good information, solid, vetted, analyzed, validated information is going to be a part of good decision making. Another thing is the information has to be shared properly and consistently across the organizational structure. It's another one of those parameters that the incident commander needs to decide how that's going to happen and also how it's not going to happen. We don't need to leave this up to chance. We don't need to leave this up to interpretation. That needs to be a pretty strict guideline as to how we're going to communicate the information. As a general rule, everything needs to be disseminated somehow, some way, but in the proper way. How do we want to do that? Each incident is going to have different parameters because of the nature of the incident. So the incident commander is going to need to have those parameters set for our situation unit so that it makes their information gathering a lot more streamlined and a lot more efficient. A lot of times information needs to be guarded from open display and open source, and especially to outside entities unless they are a partner in the event and they need the information. And then finally here, loss of situational awareness or never gaining the proper situational awareness can lead to unsafe actions on our incident, but it also can lead to tragic actions on our incident. So we want to make sure, again, that we consistently and repeatedly are gathering this situational awareness. It's a process that never ever stops. So the other position that we, again, highly recommend that you put in place early in an event, in an incident, is a resource unit leader. At this point in the incident, the resource unit has a fairly well-defined assignment just by the nature of the name. Really what we're looking for here is Are we accounting for all the resources that are on the scene? Does the incident commander and or the operations section chief know where all the resources are? Are they in staging areas? Are they assigned? Are they en route? Do we know those status? This is super easy to lose, especially in events that are ramping up really, really fast. They're growing in size. They're growing in complexity really, really fast. It's easy to forget and lose, not write it down, those kinds of things, as we have these things coming into us so fast. So we want to put those people in place as the resource unit to make sure that we're accounting for that. If we've got resources that are sitting on the side of the road and they don't know where to go, we don't necessarily know that they've arrived yet, those kinds of things, we can start helping to put staging areas in place. We can start check-in locations. We can just start to organize the process of those resources that are coming into our incident, the way that they're going to be used, the way that they're going to be managed, and the way that they're going to be tracked. So not only does the 201 provide that framework that we talked about, but it also serves as a part of the incident's permanent record. And in many cases can become a legal document if there are some legal actions that end up taking place for a given incident. This happens. So the 201 is a really good way to document the information that we're gathering. Remember, the ICS 201 is also a great tool for transfer of command. It's a snapshot of what's going on right now in the incident. So that way when we do that transfer of command, we don't have things slip through the cracks. We don't miss things by transferring the command from one person to another. In a situation of unified command, we may be going from one group of people to another. We'll talk about unified command later, but there's a lot of opportunities for this information to drop. So it could be a great tool for transfer of command. We want to understand that the 201 is a tool, but it's not over once we fill out the 201. The 201 is simply the first step in a process of a long line of documentation. Again, the situation unit and the resource unit being put in place early using this tool to gather information is a building block. We want to make sure that we understand that. It's a building block. It's our first step to getting ourselves into that incident management team, incident management process, planning P process, all those things that are going to lead to a successful incident. So you can see already that all of this work is in support of the development of those objectives. We've got that process started, and that leads to strategies and tactics that are going to move our incident forward. It's going to keep us looking toward the future, not being reactive, but being more proactive and making our incident more efficient and more coordinated. And again, you may ask yourself, how in the world am I going to staff these positions? I barely have enough people to carry out the basics on an incident right now. And again, we've talked about this in the other videos, but we have to make sure that we're looking outside of our agency. We may need to look at people in other agencies, other departments, whether that be fire, law, EMS, utilities, whatever the case may be. We need to look outside of our four walls. We need to be looking at other partners inside of our counties, inside of our cities, potentially in other cities and counties. Whatever your situation is, look beyond your borders. Make those relationships, make those friendships, develop some of those things that will begin to help you to build a team. That team doesn't need to be in-house necessarily. It doesn't have to be right in your agency if you don't have the staffing. You may have to look. Chances are your buddy down the road that you're going to enlist to help you with this is having the same challenges. So they need you as much as you need them. Hey, we want to remind you to like the video, subscribe to the channel so that you can see some of our other content and our future content. Check out our Facebook group for this particular topic. Incident Command Simplified is the group name there. We also have the Hazmat Ops Training Facebook group as well. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time.